Emily Davis, your host of the Untold Miracles podcast, and today I am so excited to have one of the most dominant pitchers in Major League Baseball history on the show. He played 24 seasons and is a 2-time World Series champion with the New York Yankees, a 7-time Cy Young Award winner, 11-time All-Star, and he had 4,672 strikeouts in his illustrious career. You may also know him as the Rocket, Mr. Roger Clemens. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm so excited to have your time today. I know you're very busy with the baseball playoffs, but before we start, I really want to thank you for your support of CMN Hospitals. We got to hang out earlier this year in Hawaii at the Ace Hardware Golf Shootout, where we raised over $2 million thanks to your support, and we're grateful for all you do to help save kids' lives, especially through your amazing foundation.
That was great fun, and what a tournament. It was so well run, and I got to meet a lot of really, really cool people, and as you know, I love baseball, but I do love golf also. I've met some really neat people through the game of golf, so I appreciate the invite, and I think it was a really nice success.
Well, we're excited to have you back in 2019, so we can look forward to raising a lot more money for the kids. Roger, on this podcast, we talk about miracles, and I would say you've had a pretty miraculous career, but I want to know when your love for baseball began, and what dreams did you have when you were a little kid around the game?
I got my first start and introduction to the game of baseball. I was 7 years old, and the only team that was, when guys, they started back then, was a 9-year-old team, organized baseball. So I got to play up with some older kids, and I think that helped me because I had to adjust really quick, and it helped me along throughout my career. I was the same way in high school. I graduated at 17 years old, so I was playing with older guys all the time, so it probably helped me to be a little bit better because I was playing against guys that were a good year, maybe a year and a half more mature than I was. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell the listeners that on my way to the major leagues, I had 3 wonderful coaches, but they were not only great coaches, they were great teachers of the game. And my high school coach, Charlie Mariano, fantastic coach. Then instead of going to the University of Texas, I ended up going to play 1 year at junior college, which was good for me. Like I said, I was young, and I had the opportunity to stay a little bit closer to home here in Houston and play for Coach Wayne Graham, who became one of the winningest coaches ever. He was at Rice, was just retired from Rice University. And then I was fortunate to go to the University of Texas and play under Coach Cliff Gustafson, and Coach Gus was the winningest coach in baseball history until Augie Garrido, who's since passed away. And but I was fortunate to meet Augie, and because my 2 younger boys, Casey and Cody, both played at the University of Texas, was recruited by Augie and got the opportunity to play under him. So some really cool guys, cool men that were just fantastic in what they did.
Well, a lot of young people out there want to make it as a professional. What did those 3 men teach you that were your biggest lesson that helped you advance in your career?
I was, my father passed away when I was 9, so I was raised by 2 strong-willed women, my mother and grandmother. So I think that's where I learned my work habits, my respect for the game, my respect on how to, make ends meet. I always thought that we were super rich, but, my mom worked 3 jobs. I mean, I remember watching her stock coolers at a convenience store and vacuum warehouse buildings as like a 3rd job at night to pick up some extra cash. And, I always had the best glove and the really cool set of cleats like everybody else did. And I know that my brothers and sisters, I have 2 brothers, 3 sisters, and I know that they had to make sacrifices too. So, I mean, it was a team effort for sure. And so I could continue to play the game that I love to play. And fortunately for me that it worked out real nice. At Texas, we won the College World Series. I pitched the final game, beat Alabama, and the Boston Red Sox drafted me, and I was on my way.
I want to go back to your senior year of high school. You were scouted by the Philadelphia Phillies and the Minnesota Twins, but you opted to go to college. What helped you make that decision?
Yeah, I think I was so young, and that was my mother's goal, that she wanted me to further my education. And you're right, I was probably a better defensive end in high school than I was a pitcher. I tell all the kids now, and for those who haven't kind of heard my backstory, I was the 3rd best pitcher on my high school team. I didn't throw very hard. Like I said, my body hadn't matured. I was pretty young, but I threw strikes. And when I talk to the younger kids or the kids in the professional ranks that I work with now, I tell them that I was a pitcher back then. Obviously, I grew and matured, and my body got stronger, and I became a power pitcher. But I was a pitcher when the guys on my high school team, when they had trouble and they had trouble throwing strikes. My high school coach would bring me into the game, and, I'd had a little fastball, great command of it, and a pretty good curveball. And so that's how I got those looks from those different people and those scouts. And my junior year, I got drafted by the Mets. It just didn't work out. I felt comfortable going to the University of Texas and playing for Coach Gus there.
Speaking of all those types of pitches, what's your favorite type of pitch to throw?
Strike one. I tell everybody.
I was thinking you might say a curveball.
They always talk about my explosive fastball, and that, I did touch 100 miles an hour a few times throughout my career, but I pitched, 95 to 97 miles an hour, probably in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, the kids, that's a great question, because the kids always ask me, or the dads, or what's your favorite pitch? Is it your split fingers, or your sliders, your curve? I said, no, it's strike one. I don't care how you get it. Get strike one on the hitter and go from there.
I love it. Well, I want to go back to June 13th, 2003. You were playing for the Yankees, and you happened to reach your 300th win and 4,000th strikeout in the same game, which I think is pretty miraculous. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was pretty cool for all to come together. I just remember when I was, obviously 20 wins in a season is a great milestone for a starting pitcher, and obviously to have the opportunity to win 300 games, which doesn't happen too often for a pitcher over his career. You have to have longevity, and you have to have your health. And just so happened that it came in the house that Ruth built, as they say, the old Yankee Stadium, and the history there. I mean, what a privilege for me to be able to play for two of the most historic teams. I pitched 13 years at Fenway Park, and then another 7 years with the Yankees at old Yankee Stadium, where the great ones ran around. My boys always make comment that, you stood right where Lou Gehrig stood to give his farewell speech, and so those things are really cool. The family actually landed the plane, got in their car to get to the stadium, and security was so tight, they actually weren't even in their seats. They ran to the home plate tunnel just in time to see the strike three called to get my 4,000th strikeout.
Well, speaking of playing for the New York Yankees, on 9/11, you were supposed to pitch against the Red Sox that night in New York. Tell us about that day.
Probably the coolest thing that I've ever had happen to me. Obviously, what went down in New York and what we all know, that was just devastating to our nation. But what came out of it, a lot of things. I was able to meet a lot of the firemen and police officers and families that lost loved ones, and to see their heartache and to hear their stories. Boy, I wish I'd have kept a better journal over my years. And, I do have, obviously, great memory of it. I need to jot it down. After that happened, we stopped baseball, and we knew we weren't going to play for a while, and then we ended up cranking it back up. We ended up getting to the World Series. The Yankees, we got in the World Series against the Diamondbacks and had a unbelievable World Series against them. I pitched Game 3 of the World Series. President Bush came to Yankee Stadium, threw out the first pitch, which was just incredible. And then shortly after that, what was an experience of a lifetime for me was General Myers. I think General Myers was our 4-star general at the time, and he asked if I would go to the Middle East to see some of our men and women and bring their morale up and, do all kinds of things. So obviously I didn't hesitate on a yes on that, and it was probably the neatest thing that I've ever done. 7 days over in the Middle East, probably saw, probably 16,000 plus troops, men and women. I was taken aback about how young our men and women were, but their energy and their passion for our country was just off the charts. Unbelievable, something I'll never forget. I will give a shout out to my good close friend Toby Keith. Mm-hmm. Toby in his USO tours, he goes over with a guitar and a songwriter or one of his buddies, and he goes into places where a lot of entertainers don't even think about going, and brings his music to them, and so he's a big supporter of it too. So I tip my hat to everybody that's listening that had men and women serve, son, daughter, uncle, brother, whoever that served in our military to protect our country. It was definitely a special trip.
Amen to that. And I know we just have a couple minutes left, so I have a couple of quick fire questions before we end. I want to know your favorite field to play in.
Obviously playing in the two historic stadiums, Fenway Park and Yankee Stadium. And then getting a couple starts at Wrigley Field. I love the history behind them. probably the best weather and best field conditions is Anaheim against the Angels. They keep the field so nice you could almost throw a sandwich in the outfield and still eat it. It's such in perfect shape. So, and the weather's always great.
Most memorable game of your career, and I know that's hard because you've played a lot of them. You've had a lot of wins, over 300.
Like 1986, I struck out 20 batters for the first time to set the major league record for strikeouts in a game, and that kind of got me on the map. That's when one of my teammates, Bruce Hurst, gave me my nickname, the Rocket. So it kind of all started there. So I have a little bit of a fond memory for that one.
Wow. Okay, you played for 4 teams. Do you have a favorite team to cheer for other than the 2 your sons play for?
I like all. I do work with all 4 teams, even though I'm somewhat doing work from a hometown team, the Astros. I work with about a ton of kids in the minor leagues, and about 20 guys I visit with quite often in the major leagues, mostly the pitchers, and mostly on their mental part of the game. That's so important at the major league level. So I enjoy really going back and doing things, whether it be charity things or visiting with the staff from any of the teams I played for.
Who is your favorite pitcher to watch in the game today?
Oh, man, there's some good ones. I enjoy watching somebody like Kershaw, Joe Kelly, Chad Green. There's just so many kids that I enjoy watching that do it right. It's really cool because I watch them, and then sometimes I'll get a call from their pitching coach to add in any suggestions or things like that. Even guys when I was active, obviously I had the opportunity to play next to for about a month in Boston with Tom Seaver. So it was really cool for me to watch another power pitcher actually do his thing at an advanced age.
What are 3 words that most describe the game of baseball for you?
I roll by not only a game of baseball, but when we talked about our military, the same thing. I carry a military bracelet with me. I wear a military bracelet, and it reads "tough all day" on it. And that's kind of how we roll. I mean, you got to be tough, and when you're kind of in the public eye, good and bad sometimes, but it's just a good little saying that I try and bring to the kids or anybody around me.
And before I ask my final question, I have to ask your predictions for who wins the World Series.
Well, right now, my buddy Toby Keith is a big Dodger fan, so I know he's rooting the Dodgers to get past the Brewers. And right now, I pulled at my heartstrings a little bit because the Red Sox are playing my Houston Astros. Last year, I was all in on the Astros because the boys needed some hardware, and so kind of my hometown again. I know the Red Sox have 3 or 4 championship rings already, and the Astros are trying to do it back-to-back. So we'll see what happens. Once we get through these, then I'll be able to declare because one of my teams are going to go through.
Yep. Unfortunately, you have to put the Astros up against the Sox, which is not cool.
I know.
For the last question, I asked this for all of our guests. If there were 3 miracles you could create in the world today, what would that look like for you?
If I allowed to put my 2 cents in or get on my soapbox, as my mother would say, I just wish everybody would get on the same page with our president of the United States. So, for instance, I did not vote for President Obama, but once he became our president, I'm all in. I'm rooting for him to do well for our country. I want him to do and get things done. I'm an American. And same thing with Donald Trump. He's done a couple of really cool things for me with my foundation. When I was a Yankee, he came out to one of my events for a while. But just, the man's our president. I don't like it when people especially go out of the country and badmouth our president. It's our president of the United States. So you wish for everybody to get behind the guy and help him make the right decisions for our country and hope that he does, and then go from there. Second and third, I just enjoy the miracles that I see that happen with not only like my foundation. There's a lot of guys that have foundations, and mine, the Roger Clemens Foundation, we help at-risk kids. I was one of those kids at one time, and growing up again, watching my mother without my father, watching her work hard, and so when I see these kids and you're able to help them out a little bit, maybe put a smile on their face for a couple of days, a week, a month, a year. It makes it all worth it. Bring a little happiness to others.
Well, Roger, I just want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for all the miracles that you create in the world with your beautiful wife, Debbie, and all that you do to help kids and give back. And I hope you go enjoy some baseball.
I will. Thank you so much,
Thanks, Roger. Today's episode is brought to you by RE/MAX. Since 1992, RE/MAX agents and offices have helped Children's Miracle Network hospitals support millions of kids each year, mostly by participating in the Miracle Home program and making a donation in their client's name after each home or property transaction. Miracle Home yard signs also serve as an indicator of the agent's commitment to helping kids in their very own neighborhood. Contact your local RE/MAX office to learn more about the Miracle Home program. Thank you.